Is
No,
it
it's
just
fine.
us in this room being recorded, yeah?
Oh, sorry, what?
Is it just us in this room being recorded? It doesn't matter if
I'm
anybody.
going to turn another light on. It looks very dark
Okay,
here.
okay, that's fine. That's great. Okay, let's go for it.
Dive in, ahoy. Yes, it is such a pleasure to be in the same Zoom room. So welcome, welcome, welcome aboard the Mother Wild Global Education Summit Mothership. So, ladies and ladies, the topic today is cultivating a well-being mindset for children and teenagers. And to be fully transparent for anyone who was on the webinar yesterday, it was super inspiring, but I also felt it was very brainy. I was talking fast. And so for the sake of today's topic, I hope to lower the center of gravity a little bit from what we've been conditioned to primarily cultivate in traditional school, which is that the center of intellect. I'd love to drop it a little bit more and be a bit more intuitive today, more in the heart and the gut region. So I will try to slow down at all costs. So let's start by all getting a little bit more comfortable in our seat. Feel free to roll shoulders up and back and down. And let's go ahead and take 3 deep inhales and 3 loud sighs out. So first deep inhale in through the nose. Hold at the top. Loud sigh out through the mouth. Second deep inhale in through the nose. Hold at the top. Loud sigh out through the mouth. Third and deep inhale in through the nose. Hold at the top. And loud sigh out through the mouth. Is that for two? Losing track of time. I could do 20 of these, really.
Very much.
Well, thank you for joining. And if you're listening to this recording in the future, keep listening. You have the luxury of fast forwarding. And if you're listening now live, welcome and keep listening. As we have no idea what's going to happen next, we will see. The pleasure of being in the now. So, yeah, I said it yesterday, but I'll repeat it. I read somewhere that as a moderator, I have to say thank you after an answer and keep it neutral and not get carried away with my own opinions. We'll see about that again. I'll try. So we have, we'll leave the last 15 minutes open for Q&A. And so if anything comes up, even within our group, then just write it down for each other. I will keep the intros short, just so we can jump into the topic quickly. So let's start with Elle in Australia. Yeah, we have a couple time zones right here. Elle is in Australia and Monica and Afton are in EST zone. So it's 5 a.m. for them while it's 8:30, 9:30. Anyway, late for Elle. So thank you for being here at these different times. So Elle Hayes is a qualified child adolescent counselor. She's also been a primary high school teacher as well as a school principal. Wait, can we highlight you just because I feel like that would make sense so we know who you are? Oh, I guess we're all highlighted. Never mind. That makes no sense. Next to me. I don't it shows up. So so as well as a principal of a holistic international school, all these experiences have provided her with valuable insights into children, their emotions, their learning needs, and what is required for optimal well-being and social emotional development. Her love of learning has resulted in a master's of education and a diploma of counseling, with additional training in family therapy, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, interpersonal neurobiology, and child-centered play therapy. She's also contributing author of the book, A New Paradigm of Education Rising. Thanks for being here. Afton Cunningham is a public school educator in an inner city district in Northern Ohio. She currently teaches preschool, but has taught upper elementary for many years. In her school district, she has served on several leadership teams and is part of the team that leads the district's literacy practices. Prior to teaching, she spent time working for the UN in New York City and teaching English in China with the Peace Corps. She has extensive international education experience, a master's in comparative and international education, and has worked on projects in Cambodia, inner city Atlanta, and Newark, New Jersey. Thanks for being here. Next, we have Monica Cotran. She's passionate about nurturing the love of learning and has a vast experience in helping learners of all ages. She has worked with children, parents, and other adults in a wide variety of educational, hospital, and business settings for over 40 years. Locally in Ann Arbor, Michigan area, and virtually online, all over the world, she especially enjoys helping learners who have unique talents and challenges develop their strengths and learn in ways that work for them. Monica has a deep understanding of the challenges faced by neurodivergent learners. She has firsthand experience supporting children with diverse learning needs, including those with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and sensory processing disorders. Through her work, I'm so sorry, Jimmy, I'm just going to mute you if you don't mind. Welcome. And sorry about that. Monica, where was I? You have first-hand experiences supporting children with diverse, dyslexia, ADHD, sensory processing disorder. As I'm like having
all the D's, all the D's.
Okay, so through her work with Learning Without Borders, Monica empowers learners and their families to create safety in learning, focusing on creating inclusive and supportive learning environments to empower learners to thrive. She has been active in alternative education since 1978. Wow.
Wow, I know. Is that old?
No. Well, I don't know. You weren't born then. How is that possible? Home education of her own children and has worked with other home educating families with self-designed learning foundation or in a variety of roles, including Director of Self-Design Global. I just found this out. We have to talk more. Janine, yeah, well, we're talking more. So thanks for being here. Next, we have Dawn Fung. She's an educator, consultant, writer, thought leader, and homeschools her 3 children. Founder of Little U and core group member of everychild.sg. Dawn is well known for her sharp analysis in alternative education in Singapore. Her opinion has been sought by political and grassroots leaders, educators, parents, and content creators. She has spoken at international and local events. She's the author of the book Homeschooling in Singapore and Education. And I believe Cheryl won't make it. Oh, she's in Washington time. It's 5 a.m. We'll just let her sleep. But I think Dawn and Cheryl, you have very similar profiles. So maybe channel your inner Cheryl when you answer, or maybe you probably would know what you would answer. So thanks for being here. Oh, yeah, today is an important piece. I think it's the most important piece. As one of my favorite quotes goes, health is your biggest wealth. And we'll talk about it tomorrow with Nelia, you're here. Nelia is in the room. But yeah, just that sense of what is home and you know, is it a physical place? And then again, like, can you Pico Iyer, I think in his TED talk was like, I'm home anywhere there's nature. And then it's like, how can you feel at home within your own body, no matter where in nature or not your body may be. So just so you know, I'm going to be wearing my captain hat, the moderator hat. So I'll first direct one question to each of you, and then I'll have some open questions that any of you who feel inspired to answer, feel free to. And then we can open it at the end for a Q&A. And then yeah, let's dive in. How about that? So Afton, I have a 2-part question for you, if you don't mind. And starting with part 1, which is what can make a public school teacher's job difficult? And I remember when we met in Ohio last year, I think you had mentioned that kids were not being fed properly, they're not sleeping properly, that you had 18 of them in your classroom, and that, so yeah, so if
28, but yeah.
Right, so tell us like about, you know, the ugly underbelly reality of public education and just, yeah, if, yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't, telling us, yeah.
Yeah. So I, unlike, I mean, not unlike, but I've seen a lot of different education systems around the world. So, you know, I'm very like competent in the US system and how it works and its runnings. So I work in an inner city district. So it's not the same as every district in the States. Um, but it's, you know, there's a lot, in public education. Sorry, it's like also 5 a.m. here. I'm like, okay, focus the words. um, so there's a lot in public education that, you know, is not great, but for the US system, like we're not doing so bad. Like there's a lot of other systems that are struggling quite a bit as well. So um I know I've heard mention in conversations on these panels that you know, school should move kind of to a thing and not a place. But a lot of my students, because it's like inner city, they're very low income, like their school is the safest place they have. Like that school building is the safest thing they have. Like we feed them, we give them, and it's not every family, and it's not that, you know, our families, like families we have, like they just struggle. Like there's, um, a lot of struggles. It's living is stressful. Living is very stressful, and it's more stressful on some people than it is on others. And so, um, you know, we feed our students, they come in very dysregulated. Um, and there's just not a lot of funding for public education in the US. There's not a lot of funding filtered into it, right? So, there's a lot of constraints. You know, I need to make sure my students are regulated and healthy and happy before I can even start to teach them what they need to know, which oftentimes I don't get to do because we're just kind of learning how to coexist with each other in such a small space. Um, you know, and especially when I taught upper elementary, I've had, you know, kids with decades of struggles. So, and they're already going through hormone changes at that age, you know. So on top of that, there's so many of them in one classroom, and they're um, just trying to, you know, get through every day, and then trying to teach them math on top of that makes it more difficult. So, I mean, that's, but at the same time, you know, is that the public education system's fault? Because we don't have, I mean, we don't have enough funding to do what we need to do, right? So we're having these large class sizes. Like think of how much more beneficial it would be if I only had 10 kids, right? Instead of 28. What?
You were alone with 28 kids?
Yes. Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's ratio. Like that's, it's fine for me to be alone with 28 kids, but at the same time, like I mean, I can manage that, but at the same time, am I being as effective as possible as an educator, right? So that's, yeah, so it was me. And if all of my children, so here's the problem. It's more of a societal issue, right? So are we funding the mental health of our country? Are we putting that first? Because if we had that, if my students came in regulated and healthy and ready to go, then sure, I could probably teach 28. Sure, I could teach them the skills they needed at that age, at that developmentally appropriate age. But because I'm, you know, that's not what I'm working with, and that's, you know, so I guess my thinking is like, you know, if we create this global system of education, how do we make it equitable? Like, where will my students fall in this? How will they have access to this kind of, I don't want to jump, I don't know if that's your next question, but, you know, that's, so, I'm trying to think of what else are my struggles as a public school teacher? I mean, there's a lot to manage. Definitely if we're talking about mental health, um, you know, the mental health of children today is what I see. I mean, it's addicted to technology. addicted to entertainment. What's next? What's next? We don't know how to be bored. Yeah, I think there are definite shifts though in the US education system that are moving more away from the competition model. I mean, it's still aggressively competitive, but I think if you think about where it all came from, first there was No Child Left Behind, then there was, oh gosh, what was the Obama one? Common Core. So if you think about all of those and and then it's all funded and pushed by Bill Gates, right? And that teacher evaluation system, all of that, all of those pressures to perform. We're finally, I think, slowly moving away from that to more equitable practices, but at the same time, we're not funding them. So we have these like visions. So the vision that we have for global education, I think a lot of people have. I think a lot of teachers, a lot of people in education, that's what they know is best practice for children. We know this. But if we can't meet the basic needs, then how will we do it, I guess? Did I hit on that okay? Is there anything else you want me to say about that?
No, this was exactly the point of the question. But the second part of the question was, I guess it's just easy to go into overwhelm. It's like, well, I don't know, how am I going to deal with 28 dysregulated kids in a classroom without funding? And I feel like the sense of defeat and not doing anything here, but I know that you didn't go down that path, and I'd love to hear how you overcame it, because I think now you, and how you built the best classroom possible for your students with that donation fundraiser initiative. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how this.
Yeah, and I think this is like a systematic failure, right? Is that teachers have to beg, borrow, and steal everything and use our own paychecks to fund education for the public, which I love my students. I mean, I will do that for them because they're little tiny humans that need to grow and learn and love. And I will do that for them, but at the cost of my own like livelihood as well. So, I utilize as many donation systems as I can, there's all kinds of crowdsourcing um platforms um for students. I mean, and I can get materials and things and items that make learning engaging and fun, and I can do that. Um, but what they really need is human connection, right? And so if I am the adult that they need to connect with, and I have 28 of them to connect with in 5 hours, if you break it down, lunch, specials, and I still have to teach content, yeah, I'm not going to have the deepest connections that I could with all of them. I mean, every day that they need true, one-on-one connection. So yes, there's all kinds of platforms. There's Donors Choose that American teachers can use. There's, oh gosh, we have our own district has its own platform, Adopt a Teacher here, and you can post your Amazon wish list. There's Clear the List, which is a national movement, but at the same time, why are these existing? Why do teachers have to do this? Why don't I have a budget to make my classroom pretty and beautiful and engaging? So, and it's a national complication.
Thank you. I did see a video of Trump promising free education or free university level education to all Americans. Let's see, but I would love to see more funding going to teachers like you. Anyways, no opinions, but opinions. Thank you, Afton. So next up, Dawn, I'd love to go to the complete opposite spectrum, which is what I was hoping to get with a panel, with a diverse panel, which is, you're in the Singapore competitive achievement focused education. So I think it's the highest. I think you've consistently ranked as #1 as the most competitive country in the world. I think there was a worldwide study on educational systems, and Singapore has highest performance in international education and tops in global rankings. In 2020, Singaporean students made up half of the perfect scores of the IB examination worldwide. And I believe in 2000, the Compulsory Education Act codified compulsory education for children of primary school and made it a criminal offense for parents to fail to enroll their children in school and ensure their regular attendance. So you and Cheryl, first of all, congratulations for homeschooling, because it sounds like you would be black sheep doing what you're doing in Singapore. I think Canada, you'd be fine, but doing what you're doing in Singapore is badass. I don't know how other word to use. So especially in a place that's so academically competitive. So what made you step off the traditional conveyor belt to be criminal offenders and homeschool your children? Tell us everything.
Okay, so my story links a bit to Afton's. I used to be a school teacher in a private school. Now in Singapore, public schools are like the cream, like, this is where you want to go, public schools, because we're the best in the world. But what nobody's telling, or not the media is not highlighting, is it's the deadliest system probably in the world. Suicides from ages 10 to 19 accounts for most of the reason why children die. There are children jumping off, there are children killing themselves, cutting themselves because of the stress related to academics. And this is something that I've been advocating for a long time. And recently a group of parents came together with Every Child .sg, headed by a ex-senior civil servant, Cora. And we've decided to just be as blatant as possible, because nothing seems to be changing. The suicide rates hasn't dropped and the pressure hasn't dropped. And I've got friends who come from America to check out this world-class education system. And frankly, when they come here, they run. It's so scary, because this education is not possible without tuition industry, and without medication, and without anxiety. All right. So what I'm thinking as well is not many people are educated about what it cost a stressful education. And we're talking about mental illness, where previously there was undiagnosed, kids were perfectly fine. And it sort of, rises up at the PSLE, which is a 12-year-old high stakes exam. We're the only country in the world that does high stakes exam for 12-year-old. No other country does that. And then after that, it's sort of like cascades as the adolescence hormonal and all that intricacies of life. It's very painful. And so to link up with what Afton's saying, you know what, Bush, enduring No Child Left Behind, really looked up to Singapore as one of the beacons of progress. I think he did. I'm not sure if that was the right policy to go down the road. But, standardized testing has been so big in the US. I'm getting afraid for the other nations. It's not good. It's not good for health. Okay, we're talking about mental health in this panel. Children need freedom, sunshine. They need understanding. They need love. They need to slow down and to have people appreciate them as children. And we are not doing that enough for our children. So in Singapore, when we homeschool, we are saying no to the education system, because you know what, about 50% of us used to be professional educators in the system, and we're seeing something that nobody's saying, and then the rest of the parents who are not educators are just saying that that's my childhood that I don't want for my kids, that I want to get out, so everyone's picking that alternative education, which is only homeschooling. Singaporeans are not even allowed in international schools. There is such control by the government to say, you can't go to these places unless you've been diagnosed to be like, neurodivergent and you need help and whatever, because we want all of you to have a common core experience. To the Singapore government's credit, we do only have 6 years of compulsory education. Before that and after that, you're really, you're free, but that 7 to 12-year-old high stakes exam is so compulsory, and so in everyone's mind, it's changed the nature of how we look at family. It's how we change the way we look at policy making and education. Till now, in our national education policy, not one education policy has been done with the consent of students. Not one. Yeah, that's crazy. And I'm just going to put this in the chat link where I've lobbied MPs for a child protection policy. You would be maybe surprised to know there's no child protection policy in any of our public schools, from primary school to second, nothing. Even in the preschool, child protection policies are not clear. I've called and asked for a child protection policy, and they say, we're not going to give it to you unless you're enrolled in our school, and it's only an excerpt. So there's no protection for children. And when there's no protection for children, there's no psychological safety, and lots of things can go wrong. So those variables are not things homeschooling parents want to face, right? So we choose to homeschool because those variables are just overwhelming. We've been through the system. 100% of us were brought up in the Singapore system, so we know what that cost us. Yeah, and we're saying we don't need those straight A's. We don't need our kids to break down at 25 years old later on. Most of the top elite schools that you see, they're making their names around the world, those top students, they're taking meds. They're in hospitals, they're in psych wards. That's not good news. I personally am very against standardized testing. I don't think it's good for any person. I've written a book, Homeschooling in Singapore and Education, where I've traced the entire world education history from, from agricultural settlements, Akkadian, Sumerian history and all that. And you know what? Education is difficult. Education is really difficult to understand for any lay person. So what you catch are glimpses of maybe your lived experiences and what people tell you, but there's a whole lot more. And we're just not maybe curious enough to know enough systems out there. But I can assure everybody who's listening that there are lots of alternatives. And education is an essentially contested term. And if you do your homework and you're willing to be curious, there is something for you out there. And if you're willing to even follow your child and discover who your child is, there's going to be something out there. And if there's nothing, you start one. There's really nothing stopping any parent from taking control of your child's education and saying, I'm going to do something about this. And in fact, what I believe most strongly is the child is the best student, a best teacher of his life, and we're there to just be part of it,
Couldn't agree more. Thank you. Sure.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question? Just it's related totally to her.
Yes.
Yeah. What happens when parents in Singapore come together and advocate for change? And then what kind of child protection policies? They don't have any mental health, physical health, anything like that at all?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, one of them was what happens when parents come together and ask for policy change in Singapore around education and the well-being of their children, and then what kind of you called them child protections in schools? Are you talking safety, mental health? There's none of that at all?
The safety and mental health is so weak that it's going to shock everyone. We don't recognize emotional abuse in school. We don't recognize verbal abuse in school. It's only sexual assault and physical assault. Only these things get reported. So when you put children under high stress, you're going to have to do things to them to make them perform. And your tools are really emotional and verbal abuse. So, and if it's not recognized in the government directory, it's not recognized in the statutes as abuse, it's not seen as abuse, and people will be like, what do you mean I'm abusive? I'm not, this is what we've been doing. So I've been, if you follow my feed, if you just Google Dawn Fang on Facebook, whatever, I've been the most vocal advocate, calling things out as they are. And to be truthful, there are people in government that are not happy with this because you're spoiling the public image of Singapore. how could you spoil our public image? We're supposed to be a world-class system. But, at the end of the day, who's education supposed to serve? This is the only ministry portfolio that serves children. 100% of Singapore citizens who are children have to report to the Ministry of Education, and I do expect better. So maybe just to sum up, what happens when parents advocate, we're still finding out. So the Every Child was just started last year, so we're going to keep fighting for these rights. But previously, parents who said something, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. Yeah, so I am thinking maybe post-COVID's going to change that. I'm thinking maybe the global pandemic that kickstarted this huge interest in homeschooling is going to change that. I'm thinking this huge wave of alternative education is going to change that. And hopefully we're going to save a generation of children in Singapore. And you know what? We don't need to be number one. Nobody needs to be number one. I don't understand even that leaderboard. It doesn't make sense. Why do children have to be pit against each other in the world? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, so I'm hopefully we'll have other indexes and the OECD will look for other things, But math and science and creativity to make each other, I don't know. I don't know what it is you want out of this leaderboard. It's not useful. Every country is so different and every child is so different. I mean, African Lesotho is always going to look bad next to us, but what do you want? I feel it's so superficial and it's so elitist, and I hope that we just come back down to the ground. Camilla, like what you said. Let's go to the ground. Let's be intuitive again. What is a child? Who is a child? And who are we? In respect in relation to a child. So thank you for your questions, Afton. That's really thought-provoking.
Oh, and what honorable work you're doing, Dawn. It's yeah, no one's ever going to pat you on the back and saying thanks for for doing, especially not the Ministry of Education if you're tainting them, but just really telling the truth. But as a friend Rhonda said, you'll never regret advocating for your children. So keep going. And if you need signatures for petitions, I think we can get you some. So next up, I'd love to, Monica. Had a couple questions for you, but I'll start with how do we help learners feel safe enough to learn? So not physical safety like guns and but safe and comfortable in their own skin to explore interests and passions. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, that's been one of my big, and I'm gonna, sorry, I sound froggy because it's 5 o'clock in the morning here, and I've only had one cup of coffee. But that's been a passion for mine because what I noticed over the years, when children have that sense of felt safety, then they can learn. Now we know with neuroscience that there's a reason for that our hippocampus shuts down, the part of our brain that's the short-term memory that processes the information. When our children don't feel safe in their own skin and with their people, then they can't learn. So it's a waste of time, actually, to be doing that. If they're not regulated and I'm not regulated, we can't learn. So the things that, Dawn, you're saying hurts my heart because, yes, if you beat down people, they'll perform for the moment, but will they become learners for a lifetime? No, right? So I was very fortunate. And again, I've been around for a long time and I've watched the pendulum swing back and forth. And that's what concerns me about education. We don't have a rudder. We don't have a rudder in child development. We don't have a rudder in what's best for children. It's for the convenience of the system. It's for the convenience of everyone. And I started out in preschool as well. Actually, I started out, my very, very first job out of college was teaching summer school to a group of little boys, all boys in second grade. And they gave me the same workbook the boys had had during the year, right? So I thought, okay, well, they just looked at that and put their heads down on this, this is all the little desks in a row, So I said, okay, boys, we're gonna learn math, but we're gonna do it in a different way. So I started cutting up the books. Well, the principal came running in what's going, and we're sitting on the floor. And obviously you don't sit on the floor, you don't cut up books. And I got reprimanded for destroying school property, which is why I ran back to graduate school and got my master's in special ed. And, but again, we did come to some agreement. I could at least push the desks together and make little tables, right? And I promised them. I don't believe in testing particularly, but I said, I want them all at this point. That's not going to happen. They're not all going to be at some special point 6 weeks from now. But I said, I'll assess where they are now. And I will assure you, everyone will make progress. I can't tell you they'll all. But I think what we need to do is create those situations where children can feel what I call felt sense. And that's kind of what Deb Dana and Stephen Porges and Dan Siegel, and these are all people who are looking at Mona Delahook. She's been one of my mentors for a long time. And I think we have to begin to look under the behavior. We have to look at what's, as Afton said, there are children coming in dysregulated to schools and even home learning. They're having a rough time. And if we don't address those issues, they just build up. And it broke my heart, Dawn, to hear, but even in a very affluent area where I live, we have a lot of teen suicide, right? And my heart goes with the wee ones. I started there and I love that. But kids need that sense. We need to prioritize relationship over content. The process of learning is much more important than the content. Otherwise, we exacerbate problems. We don't resolve them. And it breaks my heart that 5-year-olds aren't learning problem-solving skills. They're not learning how to be with other people. I mean, it doesn't matter if they know their ABCs and can count 1, 2, 3 if they can't be in the same room with other people, right? And we can't. And if everybody has to make the same turkey, it has to look the same. That's not art. That's assemblage or whatever it is. So when you prioritize well-being, when we prioritize them feeling safe, because when they're safe with me, then they're going to be safe. And the word that Stephen Porges coined was neuroception. When my neuroception, which is my automatic radar, is on all the time, sensing danger, I can't learn. I can survive. But if you want me to thrive and learn, I need to be in what we call a safe and social zone of my body. And it's bottom up. It's not top down. We can't talk our way to safety. We can only go bottom up. We have to help our body. So, in the way we do that is helping kids learn to co-regulate with their bodies. And then we create an environment, as AFNIST, hopefully you're doing it. We create an environment where they can co-regulate with their environment. And most important, can they co-regulate with me? Can I help them in my relationship be able to work together? And then we see learning. And this is a whole nother topic. Then we have to expand our notion of what learning looks like, right? Because right now we have a very narrow, and I'm sure, Dawn, you can appreciate this, a very narrow idea of what learning looks like. So I'm very passionate about this point of safety, and obviously we don't need to be arming up our teachers. I read Afton that in Ohio, they're going to allow teachers to have guns. That's not going to create safety. That doesn't create any safety. When you go to the airport and you see the security guards, do you feel safe? No, I don't feel safe. My heart starts beating, right? Fast, yes. So the idea, if I see a smile, a real smile, and I'm old enough to have lots of crinkles here, that real smile and prosody in my voice, and with little ones, you get down on their level, right? And you have a warm heart and a smile and welcoming. And again, the neurodivergent kids have a really, really hard time, right? Because they're already having a hard time. So whatever I can do to feel safe, and one of my learners is now 20. Lots of my learners are in their 20s and 30s and 40s. But she said, Monica, I feel safe enough with you, I can even learn math. And she has dyscalculia. And that is probably one of my best compliments, because if I can create enough safety that she can take the risk, and it needs to be okay to make a mistake. You know, that's my favorite phrase from Joe Bowler. Your brain is growing when you make mistakes. And that's not the system I grew up. I went to Catholic schools, and you certainly, and what I learned was you don't put your hand up if you don't for sure you know the answer, because it could not turn out well for you. So if we want creative children, we want creative adults who can solve the problems of the world, that needs to start with children. We need to feel safe. And I hope that answered your question. I don't know. I hope I answered your question, but we've got to start there. And as Afton said, children need to have their basic needs of food and shelter and being able to go to the bathroom on their own, you know, without lining up. They need basic skills, basic needs met. So it breaks my heart to hear about it. It really does.
Oh, thank you, Monica. Oh, time is swooshing by. I would love to ask Elle, and this came from Lindsay Madsen Keller. And I think last week her son had a bit of a hiccup at school, and so she asked, how do we know when our kids are struggling but developing resiliency versus when classroom just isn't working for our kid? So when, and I remember I had a little bit of, you remember last year with Elle too, my daughter Ella was having troubles at school, and it's like, how much do you push her to like address that challenge and find coping mechanisms, resiliency, or just hold her at home and say you're not forced to go back there? So when do you know how to address those sticky situations?
Well, I think they're all individual, of course. So as a mother, I think you are the best person to know your own child. And you will know, Monica, all of your words were just music to my ears. I'm sure you can see all of my books behind with my Stephen Porges, Dan Siegel, all my heroes as well. But it's
based around your 2 time zones, just so you two could be here, because you two geographically, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's that sense of safety, and when that physiological safety, and when you see that in your child, you will see it in their behavior, you will see it in their facial features, you will hear it in their voice. You will know when they feel safe, and you will know when they don't. And I think our job as parents and teachers is to co-regulate when they can't regulate for themselves. And we know that there's been way too much pressure on children to self-regulate without being taught the skills of self-regulation through that co-regulation. And so I think in those situations, I will always say to a parent, particularly a mum who's concerned, I want you to have those conversations with your child. You do whatever feels right for you, because the system is not there for your child. And so, yeah, I think it has to come back to the family and the mother-child relationship or the parent-child relationship, just to make sure that your child feels safe at all times. And going up to the school, obviously, and having those conversations with teachers and, listening to everybody talk. I think I work with teachers all the time as well, and around neuroscience, and helping them to understand about co-regulation. But when you are teaching a class of 28 children, there's no budget, you are overloaded, stressed to the nines. We're not sleeping, sorry.
Like Afton has her own family to, I mean, like, I just don't know how you, I like so much, like, ugh. On 28 dysregulated kids during the entire day at work, and then you have to go home to your own family and like co-regulate with.
Very little energy left. But, as a teacher, when we have parents come in and wanting to talk to us about their children, we're already stressed. And so, it's very hard, I think, for teachers to be able to connect with parents sometimes, because we're seeing things, from a very stressful survival, state as well. And I think those relationships, unfortunately, are breaking down because of the stress that the system and the people in the system are under. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I just think that it needs to go back to the parent and the child to work out what is best for them. The system will always tell you, you know, you need to, we have a terrible system in New South Wales. I've just moved to South Australia. I don't think it's as bad here, which is good. I'm able to work really well with those children who can't go to school. Here, they give you a lot more flexibility. I'm in the independent system. But in New South Wales, it was very regimented, and, you know, it was forcing a child to go back to school, you know, in a week. They're supposed to just get over their problems and be back in a week, and that's all we'll give you. And I was in trying to advocate, you know, could we just let the child come for an hour a day and build that up? It has to be child driven. But the system unfortunately doesn't allow that. So I think that's where parents need to feel, as Dawn said, you know, you need to feel that you can advocate for your child in whatever system you're in, and that is really tough.
But I guess, yeah, the nature of that question that Lindsay was asking, and I think you're answering, it's like you as a parent, you're reading your child, you know your child best, and your child knows themselves best. But there's, I think it's the sea otter. At some point, the mother like just grabs the pup underwater and kind of submerges it underwater so it learns to swim. And it looks a little violent. You're like, what is this mom doing? She's trying to like drown her pup, but she's pushing it to an edge where she knows that they can survive. And so it's just like knowing that edge of like, okay, build your resilience now. You can do this. Like we've built up your Ella, my daughter last night woke up at 4:30 and came to her bedroom, and then she was going through something, and so I went to her bed and we talked, and she had a lot to talk about. But the bottom line is she's like, I think I'm aging, mom, and like I'm grieving my like younger self, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do I answer this? I'm like, Ella, this is the concept of impermanence. I need monks in the room. Like, I'm not equipped. I'm going through this myself right now. Like, no. Whoa, 9-year-old dealing with this, like, you know, crying over impermanence. So,
just hold her and help her just ride the emotion. Right? Just
Be there.
regulate. Just hold on to her. Let her go through it.
If I can add that I wouldn't have, you know, that's kind of when at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm a Montessori director in one of my other chapters of my life, people would say, what do you do? When your children wake up, do you take them to the park in the middle of the night? And go, no, we're very quiet. And we, you know, and I think sometimes just holding them, you know, just holding them and just comforting them and say, you know, honey, because when we're that upset, our brain, our prefrontal cortex isn't working. So the best thing you can do at 4:30 in the morning, in my humble opinion, with 3 grown kids, is
to the body.
Is use your heart and say, honey, we're going to talk about this in the morning. Let's go lay down together, right? Let's go spoon together. And, you know, because 4:30 in the, well, it's 5 o'clock, I'm hardly coherent here. And, you know, it's that piece that, and my kids, you know, would say, stop talking, mom, stop talking, you know, because sometimes their words aren't what kids need. They need us. They need that closeness. And that's what helps them. And my daughter used to say, Mom, in the middle of the night, she'd say, I'd call and pretend I was talking to you. I just wanted to imagine what you would say when she was in her early 20s, right? And that's what we want. I want her to think, what would my mom say? What would my mom do? Okay. In that young adult period, you know, because they don't have enough life experience. I don't, you know, so my heart goes out at 9. Oh my goodness. Yes, hold her, you know, hold her and just comfort her. And wow, that brought tears to my eyes that she would be worried about impermanence at 9. I mean, wow.
Every like, oh, just wait till she's 14.
Yeah, oh, that'll be real. You'll have a lot of 14 is a whole different ball game. Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm just kidding. I had a lot of, and Janine was kind enough to help generate all these incredible chat GPT questions for you. But I actually just want to ask you, and this is not on the script, but how do you, okay, when you've had like these crazy days and you've got 28 dysregulated kids, or you've been seeing all these families with all their issues, and where do you turn to regulate?
Um, I turn off, right? So like I've gotten really good at compartmentalizing my job and my life. So I have to do that. I try to just have my own like alone time, but it's hard. It pulls on my own children. Um, but I spend the moments with them. I linger in their childhood. All of those wonderful things. I spend time outside with them, disconnected. So all of that helps bring me back. Am I the most regulated person? No, no. But as a teacher, uh, it's hard. It's harder for us to regulate too because we're feeding off of their energies all day and trying to give them our best, but we're also bringing it home, right? I stay up late thinking about my kids. Sometimes they'll message me at midnight with problems on like big problems. And I'm not super connected, but they have ways to get a hold of me. We have like Google Classroom and things like that. So, things, you are kind of connected sometimes, all the time. So,
Free to call my
um,
30 a.m.
what?
Feel free to call my daughter at 4:30 a.m. Just
Oh,
kidding.
well, I was actually just thinking about the quote you said the first day, like their souls are not ours, right? Their souls are their own, so they have to.
But not their souls, for their souls belong to the house of tomorrow, which you cannot see, not even in your wildest dream. That gives me like so much peace of mind. I remember Elle working with Elle's husband, Anthony. I would like try to say it to him and I would cry. Like it was just like there's so much that we can't see that they're gonna live through that. But
Yeah.
what Monica said of like the words we use to comfort them will hopefully be the words they find on their own when we're the day we're not there anymore. And so just choosing our words carefully is um
So, but here's the thing, right? Is so like all these things I do for myself, they're just band-aids, right? So like it's not a systematic fix. It's just like, oh, it's kind of like that toxic positivity, right? Like, oh, if I just meditate, it'll make me feel better. If I do yoga, it'll make me feel better. It's not like a sustainable, I mean, I do it and it's fine and I'm happy with my life, but it's as a population, is it a sustainable, healthy lifestyle to be just like, oh, just go do some yoga, you'll be fine. Um, that's not, yeah, sustainable for a large group of people.
well, so this could be maybe the last question, unless someone in the audience would like to add something to the chat box before we get off. But is there yeah, I wanted to ask all of you. So if anyone has a question, feel free to put it into the chat box. And in the meantime, I wanted to ask exactly on the heels of what Afton was asking, like, if there was one thing we could change in the current educational system, to make it more conducive to mental health, what do you think it would be? So you think it's money? So
Yeah. Because if you fund the public education system enough, like I said, we already know what these best practices are. At least, I mean, I can't speak for Singapore. That sounds like a very different situation, right? Like it seems like they have that capacity, but I think that a lot of educators and leaders in education, maybe not so high up in politics in our country right now at this point in time, but if you think about like best practices, I think if you were able to give children what they needed, the class sizes that they needed. So it's not money. I don't need stuff for my classroom. I need you to fund jobs. I need you to fund more teachers, more buildings, more space. Yeah, for them so that they have the capacity to connect with adults.
Yeah.
So I put a question in the chat and it just keeps that's it. I mean, it keeps popping up for me, like, and it has the whole like time every time like we talk about this, Carmela, is okay, this is great. I love this idea, but if we can't get it to work on a national scale, like we can do it on a global scale. We can start private companies, we can do all of this, but what about the kids that are left behind? I mean, not no child left behind, but my family is like won't have access to something like this unless.
yeah, no, it's not unlike international education, just for the I just wanted international education, you do have to like pay to have access to it. This global diploma, anyone with the internet can do it, and doesn't matter what country you're in, like showcasing your interests, anyone can do it from any country. So it's not for the select few. And also, I did want to premise, and I just saw, Monica, the slides from your webinar, the grounding practice, and I think Elle and you both use it a lot, like, you know, what do you see, what do you smell, what do you hear, what do you, and so Martha Beck just, my teacher just finished a book about anxiety, and Liz Gilbert as well. They all turn back to the senses to like ground themselves again, and they made lists with huge of like all the things they love hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, and all of them do not require money. Most of them, like, it's just returning to that, like they call it being a steward to your own vessel, like the own body. And so of course basic needs need to be met. Let's, like, that part is unavoidable, but past that, like, I don't think it takes much to ground or to be in the body. But so your question was, oh, did we lose Dawn? Okay, yes, so she had to dash. Well, I think we're did we have any questions in the chat that we needed to yes, welcome back.
Just add in something, Carmela.
Please.
Just an observation over my years of teaching. It had always taught in, you know, primary schools, high schools with big classes, and then moving to Bali and going to an alternative international school. I had a lovely few years there of, you know, I think one year I had 8 children and 2 teachers in the classroom. And the relationships that we built with those children, we never had a child not wanting to come to school. Anytime there was an issue between the children, one of us could go out and sit with that child and work through whatever they were experiencing. And I'm lucky enough to be in a Montessori school now as a school counsellor, and it is very similar, small classes, every teacher has an assistant, and the relationships are number one. And I think for me, what we need to change in education, aside from all the systemic things and the curriculum and all of that, I think we need to bring it back to relationships, smaller classes where teachers feel like they can actually build those relationships, and that learning can then happen. It will take off. My school is a very small Montessori school, and when we're talking about standardized testing in Australia, it's all about the NAPLAN. Our school's 3rd in the state, and yet it's not a big fancy school. We have very low socioeconomic you know, clientele, but we're 3rd in the state. So to me, it's just been beautiful. I've only been there 8 weeks, but it's so beautiful to be in an environment that showcases everything I've ever believed in, and to see it in action is amazing. So for me, I think they're the changes we need to make.
So smaller classrooms for sure. Anything else we could change with the current education system to make it more conducive to mental health? Any other ideas?
I'll just piggyback on what Ella was saying, and that is to focus on relationships. You know, there's so many, we need to focus on the relationship. The learning will come when the children have a relationship with someone. I know, and if you watched my webinar that I just did the other night, you know, I told you have to find their strengths and talents. We need to honor their interests because we want them, and we have to have a connection. Safety and connection. And so like you asked for 1, but that's 3. But, you know, strengths and talents and strengths, interests, right? Link whatever this content is to what they're interested in. If the kid likes sharks, you can learn all kinds of things about sharks, right? Whatever it is. And those interests may come and go. But that relationship that somebody cared about me and what interests me will hold them forever. You know, that will be. So a good friend of mine who passed away said, we hold our children hand for a while, but we hold them in our hearts forever. And it's an ad, I don't know who said it, but we do. You know, I have children coming back to me that are adults now and going, I remember when we did blah, blah, blah in Montessori. And it wasn't the materials, it was what we did together, you know, that walking alongside them. So that's my piece. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Any last parting words before we close?
Okay, so my turn to share. So I'm going to honor that pattern I think that we're all seeing, which is that relational connection between teacher and child. But more importantly for us in Singapore, it's connection between parent and child. We've made it this, I don't know, this altar where we sacrifice the child to the system, where it's perfectly fine to separate children and parent for long hours a day. The move now in Singapore is infant care, where you're going to give up your baby for 6 to 7 hours a day so that you can work. So for the first 7 years of the life, it's going to be normalized that you're not even going to see your child as much. I'm not okay with that. Yeah. It's you can see why Singapore wants to do that. It's the economy, it's all about like the materialism and the consumerism. It's not good. It's just really not good. As an education system, if we could change one thing, is to reclaim that connection back, is to get back that relationship between parent and child, and to say we need to heal that first. And we need to make that a priority before we even think about all that certs and portfolios, whatever you want, but get back to the core of the attachment, get back to secure attachment, get back to child safety. Everything else is negotiable. It's okay. Things are going to work out, you know.
I'm working with lots of mothers. Some mothers do thrive by going back to work and staying at home. Some it's not what they were designed to do, or it's not what they want to do. And sometimes having childcare, like a couple hours away to work on whatever they need to work on. So yeah, so finding at least I like that you use the term parent, not mother. And just like the Scandinavian countries where they can divide the rearing between, I just saw a statistic that men have stepped up like 75% in only like one or two generations, how much they help in the house and in child rearing. So yes. Well, thank you, ladies. I love the different views, and I just love gathering women. And thank you for waking up early, for staying up late. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening, and wishing you a lovely day and night, and hope to see you for the last panel in about 12 hours. Thank you, ladies. Have a lovely day. Bye.